With Ne Zha 2 becoming the highest grossing animated movie of all time, I find it appropriate to rank every single animated movie to make $1 billion at the box office. If you guys want to rank these movies with me, you can leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And with that said, let's get started. Now I have so many videos just roasting on Moana 2, saying how much I do not like this movie. Now I did rewatch it before this ranking when it did hit Disney Plus, and I can say maybe I was a bit too harsh on the movie before. I did enjoy it a little bit more than I did before, but still with that said, it is still not a great movie. A keyword I've been using is everything you loved about Moana but taken away, that's Moana 2. Now, I'm not going to dive into all my problems because I've done that in like 6 other videos. You can check out one of those if you really wanted to hear me rant on this movie. But still, on this rewatch, I still kept all those problems. Maybe my problems with the songs did fix because I did find myself enjoying the songs a little bit more this time around, but they're still not memorable. And just compared to the first movie, this movie is nothing. And still not comparing it to that first movie, this movie is still not that great either. But like I said, I have millions upon millions of videos ranting on this movie that you could check out if you really wanted to see my thoughts on this movie. I talked about it way too many times to talk about it here again. But if you really want to see my thoughts on it, you can check one of those videos out. Now, I do really enjoy Despicable Me 3. It brings back that villain stuff that Gru goes through in the first movie and brings it back into the third movie. Now, granted, the second movie does have his villain-esque, kind of, but it's not fully there. The third one kind of brings him back to stealing, kind of brings him back to the villain that he is, which I do appreciate about the third movie. And I just love the storylines they have in here. Gru, turns out he has a twin brother. The villain, I do enjoy the villain, and like the fact that he was like a TV star back in the day, that kind of like fits the tone of this world. And I love the Minions storyline. The Minions are fun to be around, and I feel like in this movie, they had a pretty interesting storyline with them in prison. Now, I do wish a bit more storylines were fleshed out. This movie is like 1 hour and 20 minutes, not counting the credits, so it is pretty short. I feel like the villain could have been fleshed out more. Gru's brother definitely could have been fleshed out more. I feel like just a lot more elements could have been fleshed out more, but instead they're just kind of breezed over. But for me, the Despicable Me movies are just supposed to be a fun time, and that's really all they're supposed to serve. And Despicable Me 3 serves that and gives that to me. That's all I expect from these movies. That's what I get. And if that's what you guys are wanting, then this movie will definitely deliver on that. But compared to the other movies on this list, this one's just a safe entry to make $1 billion. Now for me, I've seen the Minions so many times. It used to play on loop in my house sometimes. So I do have more nostalgia to this movie than a lot of people do because I know a lot of people hate this movie. I enjoy it, kind of like Despicable Me 3. I go into these movies expecting a fun time, and that's exactly what I get from the Minions. The movie works as a fun time with the Minions. If that's all you're expecting this movie to be, that is what it's going to be. It's a movie about the Minions. Despicable Me 1 and 2 showed us what the Minions are like. So going into a Minions movie, you're not expecting a serious story. You're expecting a fun story circling around the Minions. And that's exactly what this movie delivered for me. A fun time with the Minions. And since this movie is all about the Minions, I enjoy it more than Despicable Me 3. Although I do like the storyline in Despicable Me 3 more, the Minions is more fun of a movie. Like I said, I rewatched it a lot, and it used to play on loop in my house, so like I said, I have more nostalgia for it, so I just prefer it over Despicable Me 3. On paper, Despicable Me 3 is better, but since I've seen the Minions more times, I just feel like the Minions is better to me, because it means more to me. Finding Dory serves as a solid sequel to the first movie, Finding Nemo. Although this movie is missing most of the charm that Finding Nemo brought and the theme that Finding Nemo brought, Finding Dory just doesn't feel the same without those elements in there. But when you follow the main character Dory, who has short-term memory loss, it's going to serve as a funny movie because that's the kind of character Dory is. Just a funny character because she has short-term memory loss. And since now she's the main character of her own movie, that's kind of what you get. But since the most movie she is separated from Marlin and Nemo, you're missing that dynamic in the movie. Something that made the first movie special was Marlin and Dory. But you're missing that in this movie. Now granted, you do get new characters, and I love the new characters in this movie, but it's not Marlin and Nemo. So that dynamic is missing, but you do get Hank and Dory, which that dynamic is still fun, it's just not Marlin. But Finding Dory still gives us a fun film circling around Dory. It gives us some backstory about Dory that we didn't know we needed, but we appreciated getting. And for Finding Nemo sequel, I feel like Finding Dory delivers on a sequel of what you wanted from Finding Nemo. Now the Mario movie serves as a treat to Mario fans. There are so many Easter eggs, there are so many references in this movie that Mario fans will get. And the entire movie is just filled with Easter eggs for Mario fans to have fun. Now granted, the plot is rushed, an hour 20 minutes not counting the credits. These Illumination movies are always rushed because they're always short. But the movie is saved from all the Easter eggs that appeal to Mario fans. And I do enjoy the plot of the movie. I'm curious to see where they go with the sequel. But we're introduced to the world of Mario, we're introduced to the characters of Mario, and we'll see how they continue to build upon this world in the sequel. Now, unlike the first Frozen, I didn't really grow up on the second one because I didn't really watch it that much. I think I only seen this movie 4 times. I rewatched it before this ranking. I rewatched it before my Disney ranking. I seen it once in theaters, and I think I rewatched it one other time between that. So I didn't really have the same nostalgia for it as I do for the first movie, which we will talk about later. First movie storyline interests me a lot more and hooked me in a lot more. This storyline doesn't really hook me in the same. Now, I do appreciate the more mature story that this sequel took, but the story never interests me. But everything else is still on par with the original film, and I do feel like the songs are just as memorable as that first movie. There's a lot of moments I like more in this movie than I do for the first movie, but the story is never fully able to compare to that original. Now, like I just stated, I grew up on this movie, so it means a lot more to me. I've seen it at least 50 times, maybe more. The music still holds up to this day and is as repeatable as ever. Like I also just stated, the story in this movie is strong. It also has that sister dynamic. Anna and Elsa are sisters, and you can feel it with the dynamic that these characters have. Now, my main big problem with this movie is Hans as a villain. I like his motivation, but the way they executed the twist didn't really work, especially when you rewatch the movie and pay attention to Hans. He doesn't really give clues that he's a plot twist villain, like plot twist villains should. It just felt kind of forced and random, but the motivation around him, I can get by, but the villain himself is not the best. But compared to all the other movies on this list, this one just has to fall right here. I love it. It's not as good as the others, though. Now, like Moana 2, I talked about Inside Out 2 all the time. Instead, I talked about how great of a movie Inside Out 2 is. Now again, if you want to hear my thoughts on this movie, I have millions upon millions of videos talking about how great of a movie this is. That by this point, I just talked about this film way too many times that I don't feel a point of just repeating myself over and over again, because I have plenty of other videos talking about this movie. But I will say that this movie is better than the original film, and Pixar can do countless of sequels with this movie because they can always age up Riley, and their audience is going to grow up with her. They can just connect to Riley even more, and this is definitely a franchise that they could make thousands of sequels of, and no one would get mad because we all age with Riley, so we all would connect to Riley even more. Now, Toy Story 4 is still able to capture the heart that the original trilogy of Toy Story brought, and this movie still does feel like a continuation to that trilogy. I almost love this movie, but I have so many problems with the storyline, especially the ending. If you don't know, Toy Story is my favorite movie of all time. Toy Story 3 is still up there. It's like in the top 5 if I were to break it down. So I love this franchise of movies. But I have problems with this movie. The characters are out of character. Woody, Buzz, they're out of character. Buzz is dumb the whole movie while listening to his inside voice. Now his conscious, his actual voice box. And he has that control him throughout the entire movie. Is it funny? Yes. Is it in character? Absolutely not. They did Buzz dirty and kind of ruined him in Toy Story 4. I don't know why they did that. Hopefully he's redeemed in Toy Story 5. Now Woody. Woody's the big one for me. His whole character is putting others before himself and helping toys. But the ending, he breaks character. He leaves the gang to join Bo Peep. This frustrates me because it could have been a great ending, which I will dive into later, but the way the movie wrote it, the way the movie told it, Woody breaks character here. A Toy Story 3 behind the scenes video, the commentary throughout the movie, said that there's no other scene where Woody would leave the gang. In the commentary for Toy Story 3, when Woody was leaving the gang at Sunnyside to try to escape Sunnyside, the creator said there's no other scene that Woody would actually leave the gang because they're like family to him. And then you get to the Toy Story 4 ending. What does he do? He leaves the gang forever to go with Bo Peep. May I remind you that the trilogy of Toy Story movies is about never leaving your kid behind. What does Woody do? He leaves his kid behind and joins Bo Peep, which is not even the character that was fleshed out enough for us to root for Bo Peep. Now you might be saying, Bonnie doesn't play with him anymore, which would be true if we don't see Bonnie playing with him in the movie. And the ending was missing that emotion. Because if the gang was actually together like they were in Toy Story 3 and were all main characters of the movie, it could have been emotional because I never really liked the new characters that they introduced in Toy Story 4. Toy Story 3 was able to balance out all the characters and all the new characters. And that gang, that Toy Story dynamic between all the characters was prominent in Toy Story 3. And that's what's missing in Toy Story 4. They barely have any lines. Slinky, Rex, Ham, Potato Head, they don't really speak in this movie. That's the frustrating part. The movies doesn't have the same flair to it because they're not really part of it. And if they were part of it, I feel like that ending could have been more emotional because we're actually with that gang the entire movie instead of with these dookie new characters that I didn't really connect to. Toy Story 3 had the perfect ending. Toy Story 4 kind of ruined that because they didn't write it correctly. Hopefully Toy Story 5 can actually end the franchise off. Maybe not better than Toy Story 3, but better than Toy Story 4. Now, technically, I do prefer Toy Story 4 over Incredibles 2, but I have more problems with Toy Story 4 than I do for Incredibles 2, so I do like Incredibles 2 more. Now, although the villain is not as good as Syndrome, which is not a fair comparison to be making, but when you have a sequel in the original film, you're going to compare the two. But Screenslaver is not as good of a villain as Syndrome is, and the twist doesn't really work. And the story's not about a midlife crisis. Incredibles 2 just still serves as a fun time. It's a superhero film. Although it doesn't have the same maturity, the same theme that the first Incredible movie brought, I always liked this film, and I will never understand the hate for it. Although it's not as good as the original film, I do feel like the hate is just kind of over the top. You still have the same charm and dynamic between all these characters to still make it the same film, just without the same storytelling. And that's where we get the new highest grossing animated movie of all time, Ne Zha 2. Now the thing about this movie is that it came out of nowhere and surprised everyone. If you live in America or anywhere on this side of the world that's not China, you have no idea what this movie is. And then all of a sudden I saw tweets saying it was $1 billion film. And then next thing I knew, it made $2 billion. And then now it's in the top 5 highest grossing movies of all time. And does the movie deserve that? Absolutely. This movie deserves it. A small-scale movie like this being in the top 5 highest-grossing movies of all time is automatically an achievement that should be granted. If you don't know what this movie is, the comparison I've been making is the storytelling and theme of something like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and the action scenes and humor of an anime, specifically DBZ. The action, Huge standout. Like I said, DBZ is a comparison to the action in this movie. And my favorite parts of this movie are the action. And the high moments in this movie are the high moments, and I've still been thinking about them a month later. This movie ends everything off on a high note that I can't wait for Ne Zha 3 to come out. Hope we don't have to wait another 6 years for that. Animation looks beautiful. You can tell they had a higher budget than the first movie. Story is a lot stronger this time. A lot better than the first movie, especially with this theme this time around incorporated into this movie. The movie just knows how to balance the storytelling, the theme, the action, the comedy. This movie has it all and is able to balance it all together to make this great movie. If you haven't seen Ne Zha 2 yet, I highly recommend it. And if you want to see my review on this movie, you can find that on this channel. Now let's just say Disney knew how to tell this story. I love cop detective movies, and that's kind of exactly what this movie is. For me, this is one of Walt Disney's best movies. It's definitely in the top 10 for me for sure. The movie is able to keep you on suspense and keep you guessing. How is this detective story going to come to a close? How are these predators going savage? You're just interested in seeing the story unravel, seeing Judy Hopps slowly uncover the case. And I hope they kind of have that same flair in Zootopia too, because that's what was so special about this movie for me, and I still hope it carries over onto that. And then we still have the theme in this movie about kind of like racism, and I hope that theme also carries over into Zootopia too, which from what I heard, it seems like it's going to. And I'm just excited to see what that sequel decides to bring to the table that's different from this movie, but also still building out this world even more. I've been waiting a while for the sequel, so I can't wait that we finally get one this November. Now, as I stated before, Toy Story 3 is one of my favorite movies of all time. The first Toy Story movie is my favorite movie of all time, and this trilogy just means so much to me, especially this movie. That satisfying ending. It deserved to end off this trilogy, which technically to me it does. Pixar does it again, and every time I watch this movie, I always cry, because that's what this movie is. Pixar always makes you cry, and every time I see that ending, every time I see that fire pit scene, I always cry. Just the theme of learning to move on hits every time, and seeing those toys at that fire pit holding hands together before they're burned is also touching, that they mean so much to each other like that. And another reason why Toy Story 4 kind of unraveled that. You can tell the writers definitely took their time with this movie. When it comes to the prison escape stuff, when it comes to the theme, the writers knew what they were doing with this story. Took their time, understood the material, unlike Toy Story 4, and knew how to age up these characters. Andy grew up with his audience, so the audience is still able to connect to the theme more, and connect to the characters more, because the characters also matured as well. And like I said, Toy Story is Toy Story because of the gang, and the movie is able to bring that exactly in here. Toy Story doesn't feel the same without them, as Toy Story 4 proved. Definitely is one of the best Pixar movies, and one of my favorite movies. And definitely deserves to make $1 billion. Maybe even more. This should be the highest grossing animated movie, but I'm glad Ne Zha 2 earned that. If I had the time machine, the first thing I would do is go and watch this movie for the first time again. I was never able to see it in theaters, and I feel like watching this movie in theaters would have been special and just hit different. With that audience reaction too, opening night, I'm sure it was definitely an experience that I will never see. And I wish I was able to experience that. But anyways, that was my ranking of every single animated movie to join the $1 billion club. If you liked this video, maybe these ones on the side of this too. Like, subscribe, and see you guys next time. Goodbye.